Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be reviewing this massive lens. I'm talking of course of the RF 2870 f2. That means one is for RF, so mirrorless camera, and second, that f2 is constant through the whole zoom range. And you may think, oh, it's big because you have the hood on. Well, let me take the hood off and you'll see that it is still a massive, massive lens. It's big compared to the R6. Honestly, guys, when I was looking through the Canon lineup, looking for lenses for my R6, this lens never caught my attention. I saw it as big, clumsy, weird zoom, like why 28 and not 24, and why 70 not do something bigger like 105 or 85. It was like one of those lenses that I did not consider at all. I was lucky enough to test it, so I actually had this for 48 hours by Canon, and this lens is awesome. Let me summarize it as one thing. Having this lens on your camera is like having 3 prime lenses in one. So you have your 35mm, your 50mm, and your almost 85. So I'll give you a trick on how to get to 85mm with this one, although it stops at 70. I don't have to swap any lenses whatsoever to get those prime apertures that you normally would get, or the quality of the image coming out of there. So let me just start a little bit with the specs about this guy and also the physical, and then I'll get into likes and dislikes. So the first thing that you notice about it is this is a massive lens. It's the biggest lens I've ever mounted on my R6. The only thing that ever came even close to it was the RF 85mm 1.2. However, this is both larger and wider. So the other one I think had a 80-something millimeter thread. This has a whopping 95mm. It's also heavier. So the other one was around 1 kilo. This is 1.4 kilo. So you can really tell that on the camera. And it also makes the R6 very top heavy. And the reason for that is that Canon put 19 elements of glass into this lens to make it work. And it even gets bigger when you zoom out. So you have like a slight zoom lift on it. A lot of the weight isn't on the tip of the lens, so it doesn't make it even more top heavy, but you do notice some weight there. So going on with the physical, build quality. This is a robust lens. So it has weather sealing inside, according to Canon's website. This part here is coated as really durable plastic, similar to other high tier RF lenses. Inside that, it has to be like full metal. It's built like a tank. I mean, you really think you could drop this, throw this at a wall or anything and nothing will happen to it. I wouldn't do it because you don't want to crack the glass, but even so, this is some sturdy construction by Canon. On the outside, you have 3 rings. So the first ring on the bottom is this zoom ring that goes from 24 to 70. The second one is your focus ring. It's focused by wire, so it's electrical focus. And the last one is the control ring that comes with most RF lenses that Canon is doing. So it's a system of the mirrorless camera and allows you to control by default exposure. But if you want, you can adjust it to control ISO, aperture, anything that you want to change. You then do it in the menu of the camera, and then the control ring controls that. On one side of it, you have your autofocus versus manual focus. And on the other side of it, you have a lock for the zoom. So it locks it in the 28 position. So I start off the video saying I wasn't even considering this lens, but then I was lucky enough to have one and now I love it. It's like my favorite, and probably the best lens of Canon of all time. And the way it worked for me was putting it on the R6, taking a couple of pictures, and then looking at them and getting absolutely blown away. So let me actually do that with you guys. I'm gonna go there and change this lens. And we're back. So what's the best way to review a lens? It's actually do the video with the lens on the camera, okay? So what did I have mounted? I had an EF 24-105, L lens as well, F4. And basically what I did was turn the camera off, swap lenses, and turn the camera on again. So I kept the F4 aperture, all the other settings are exactly the same, and press record. I mean, hopefully you can already notice a difference because that will showcase what I mean about this lens. So there are 5 things that I absolutely love about this lens. So the first thing, I'm gonna call it, I don't wanna say sharpness because that's the easy word, I wanna call it character. The character of this lens means that you point it at anything, and as long as you're nailing the shot, you're nailing the autofocus, you're using the right settings, that picture will pop. So I told you that I didn't really consider this one, so I just put it on the camera and started shooting some pictures around the house. One of the first pictures that I took, you can see if you zoom into the eye, like that shine around the eye, that level of detail in the eye, for me, it was impossible to get with any of the other lenses that I've tested so far. The closest would be the RF 85mm 1.2, but even so, I think this one has a slight advantage over it in terms of detail definition, that character that I'm talking about. I kind of wouldn't call it sharpness, I would call it the all-around package. Although it has less bokeh, because of the not being a 1.2, it like more than enough with the aperture of 2. So I want to showcase to you guys an experiment I did for this. So actually I started with going out to shoot some landscapes, and I took 4 lenses for you guys to see kind of an evolution and judge it by yourselves, and I really hope that YouTube does this justice. I started by putting a 50mm, so this is the EF 50mm 1.4, not an expensive prime. The second lens that I put on the camera was this one. It's the kit lens that comes with the R6, the 24-105 f4 to 7.1. which means that it's not constant aperture during the zoom. So if you put it at 50mm, you can't have f4. You actually have to uplift it. I think it's f5.6, okay? But what I did to compare it was I put it at 50mm. So prime 50mm, kit lens 50mm, then came my trusted 24-105 f4, also at 50mm, and then this amazing 28-70 f2 at 50mm as well. And I took exactly the same picture with all 4 lenses, and I'm gonna run by them here in the video just for you guys to see the difference in detail and the difference in character of the lenses. So the second thing I love about this lens is that f2 aperture. So I ran a review, which a link should appear here, of the RF 24-70 f2.8. And that's also why I never considered this lens. I saw 2.8, 2, not a major difference. Well, it turns out it's almost double the light, and boy, is it noticeable. While the 24-70, I lauded it for its sharpness and the quality of pictures, it doesn't pop like this one does. Like the only other lens I've seen to do something even better than this, but a prime, is the 85mm 1.2. Given it's January in the UK, we're in lockdown currently, so it's not that I can go outside and take a lot of pictures. So most of the pictures that I've been experimenting with on this lens have been indoors with not good lighting. I'm not in a studio, I'm just at home going around. So like what I would think is that with other lenses, I would need to either put a flash system up or pump the ISO up quite a lot to get that light in these conditions. With this lens, I can use a f2 to get amazing pictures even in low light. There are some cases of pictures I was taking in dark rooms and still it's able to get that detail without a lot of grain from the ISO going extremely up. So the number 3 thing I like about this lens is it's extremely unique in what it does, and there's no other lens in the market like it. So either you get larger zoom capabilities like the 24-70 2.8, the RF that Canon has in its lineup, or even a 24-105, or you go for aperture, and you would probably go into prime lenses, some pretty expensive like the RF 85mm 1.2, but none of them do what this one does, which leads me to point number 4 of why I like this lens. So it's like having 3 primes in one. So you have your 35mm f2, you have your 50mm f2, and you have kind of an 85mm f2. And why do I say kind of? Because you're gonna say, well, it just goes from 28 to 70. Yes, but what I do is I'm actually taking at 70mm portraits or landscape and then cropping it to 85mm. It's almost the same, so there is some proportions that do change versus a true 85mm, but what I've seen is that given the sharpness and also given the resolution that the R6 has, you can do that crop pretty much to get something equivalent to an 85mm. The other experiment that I ran was trying to do portraits with all 4 lenses. The 50mm 1.4, the kit lens from from the R6 and that 24-105 f4 plus our awesome monster lens and took portraits at 50 millimeters just to show you guys the difference. And YouTube compression allowing, you'll see the pop that it has at 50 millimeters. So this is really a prime lens at that focal length. And then the other advantage that I've seen with it is that I can actually do wider than 28, which is the other question I normally see in forums. Like, do you see a difference to the 24? Well, actually I'm doing a hack, which is I flip the camera on its side and I take a couple of pictures of the landscape that I want to do in a wider angle. And then I upload them to Photoshop and I do photo stacking. And you'll see that the results that come out of it are pretty astonishing. So the fifth reason that I absolutely love this lens is video. So this can replace any prime lens that I'm using on video. So it's not only a photography lens, but it is a video lens. So in terms of autofocus, so how it's blistering fast. You point it at a subject and the autofocus nails it almost every single time. Now that we've gone through my love of the lens, what are the 3 things that I would improve on it? The first thing is the obvious thing, the size and the weight. So it is a massive lens, both in terms of diameter, in terms of weight, and also in terms of size in front of your kind of small mirrorless camera. It makes the whole structure front heavy, very front heavy, to the point that I don't know why Canon didn't include a tripod mount on the lens on this one. So anytime I mount this on a tripod, the tripod tends to lean forward. So one, I have to kind of position the legs so that one of the legs goes forward so it doesn't tip front. And also, like, you can see the strain on the mount of the weight being in front. The other thing around the size and the weight, which might be a slight problem, is that the thread or the diameter of any filter is 95 millimeters. There's not a lot of filters out there at that size, at that whopping size, and the ones that are pretty expensive. So just think about that. If you want a UV filter always on this lens, that's an additional cost for you. The second thing is lack of image stabilization. So it has absolutely none in the lens. In the case of the R6, there is in-body stabilization, which does work with this lens, so you can activate it in spite of the lens not having image stabilization, but it only gives you, from what I saw, and again, not very scientific, 1 or 2 stops, and that's it. Which means that if you're trying to do lower shutter speed, it will come out blurry. Which, for example, my 24-105 or even the other lenses that I've tested, the RF 2470 or the 7200, given it has image stabilization in lens and body, can go up to 8 stops of image stabilization. So that gives you an extra plus, especially when shooting in low light, which is a pity about this lens. But my guess is Canon wanted to keep it as compact as possible. So if they added image stabilization, it would be another weight on into the lens. Which leads me to the third point and probably the biggest elephant in the room, which is the price of this lens. In the UK, it is now at £3,029. Correct. $3,000 for a lens. It is amazing at what it does. However, it's probably not for a hobbyist. It's for somebody that is doing something with their photography and probably earning some money out of it. So for me, this lens is probably the best of what you can get at 28, almost up to 85, although it is a 70, as we talked. But it is for a very particular audience that wants the best of the best and can either afford it or has some type of ROI, so they're going to use it for a photography or a videography business. Cinema business, videography, and is able to actually get a return on that high investment because $3,000 for one lens is not for everybody. And that's our review, guys. I was truly surprised when I got this lens to test of how amazing it is. I absolutely love it. It is the best lens in Canon's lineup, and I would recommend it to anybody who has the means and the capabilities of getting one, especially since it replaces quite a lot of primes that you would have to buy otherwise, all in one package, and it's truly unique. So it truly is something different, and I loved every minute of using it. So hope you guys like the reviews. Leave me anything in the comments below, anything that you agree with, disagree with, and also if you'd like me to see or review anything else. Bye, until next time.